Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean Mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard.
In the heart of Trinidad and Tobago, one man's quiet evening takes a chilling turn. As darkness envelops his home, a radiant light pierces through the window, illuminating his room with an otherworldly glow. What begins as a curiosity quickly spirals into an unsettling mystery.
My name is Shane. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago in the West Indies. I grew up in a small town called Princestown. Very quiet, very close-knit community. Around me were mostly relatives, so everyone were pretty close. One night, I came home from my final exam for my bachelor's degree, so I was a bit tired. I walked into my room around 7, proceeded to go on my computer to check my email, and then I sat on my bed on my phone browsing. I eventually laid down, and there I fell asleep. I got up naturally around 2 a.m., just laying there at the foot of the bed, pretty uncomfortable because I don't usually sleep on the foot of the bed. And my direct vision is outside of the window. And I'm seeing this light in the sky, but it's a bit fuzzy. It is larger than all of the other light sources, like stars in the sky. So I peer at it in my peripheral for about 15 to 20 minutes until I'm fully ready to get up off the bed. All this time I was on my phone, just using BBM Messenger, until I got up and went to the window and decided I'm going to smoke. And I'm closer to the light now, and I'm realizing this is a light that I have not seen before. I usually smoke at this window, so I'm familiar with what stars are around gazing. And this is about 4 times the size of a star. I am there for about 10 minutes, just standing by the window, and all of a sudden the light splits in 2. And one goes to the left and one goes to the right. And I'm like, holy shit, what is happening? At this point, I'm scared out of my mind, because obviously this is not something usual. So I call my friend, because she was up, to find out if she is seeing it like that, even though she doesn't live very close to me. She responded no, and I proceeded to speak to her for about 10 more minutes until I saw that the lights came back together to form one light. At this point, I told her that I have to go because I don't want to panic her and tell her I'm seeing aliens or UFOs in the sky. So I told her I'm going, and also I wanted to record what was going on. I pulled out my BlackBerry. I recorded 1 minute of footage just to make sure that I got everything. When I finished recording, I excitedly opened the gallery and opened the video. And I'm seeing very distinctly the stars that I usually see in the night sky at that window. But where the light source that is 4 times the size of these stars supposed to be, there's basically black hole. There's nothing there. I'm like, what is going on? What is happening here? I have another phone that I usually use for camera purposes. I said, okay, well, if this BlackBerry not working, this is definitely gonna take it out. So I get my phone and I start to record. Before I hit record, my phone starts bugging out. The screen itself, you were seeing lines on the screen, like if something is affecting, like you put a magnet by your phone, and all of a sudden, the phone shuts down. Everything else in my room, the air conditioning unit, the fan, and the lights start blinking and then go completely off. This is Trinidad and Tobago. Power usually goes for no reason. So I'm like, okay, maybe we haven't some power issues. I look to the left, my neighbor has electricity, right? My other neighbor has electricity. So I'm thinking, okay, we have a problem in our house. Maybe I need to go and check the panel that something is happening. I look to the left of me, which is my sister. My sister's room has power. Her air conditioner is fully powered. I look to the right of me, my mother's room. I could see her nightlight on. I could hear her air conditioning unit running. And everything in my room is not working. Now, upstairs and downstairs is separated by two different panels. So, for my room alone to not work, that has nothing to do with the electrical. Because if I am not getting power, everybody else on the top floor is not getting power. So I'm like, holy shit, is this? I mean, I know a little bit about aliens. So is this some sort of EMP or some kind of thing like that that caused all my stuff to just stop working? So now I'm totally petrified of what is happening. And this is where things went from bad to worse. Because now, not only is there a light in the sky, the light is proceeding to come closer towards me. I'm a little shook and in two minds about moving from this window and staying and seeing what is going on. So the light proceeded to come down and forward. It reached about 4 or 5 houses away from me and just stood there, hovered there for about 2 minutes and then jetted off to the left. I was in total shock. After that, I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I went back onto my bed. I got on my phone and I was just playing on my phone and looking at my peripheral vision to see if there's anything by my window. Basically, I guarded my window until morning and didn't get any sleep that night. In the morning, I decided that I'm going to go to my friend's house in Europe, which is about an hour away. I leave home immediately before everybody gets up. I'm there by about 8 o'clock. And I'm speaking to my friends and I'm torn between telling them what happened and not telling them because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. But I need to tell somebody like what's happening. I eventually did not, but it so happened that one of my friends, which lives about 30 minutes from me, he was saying last night in his area, there were a lot of national helicopters, around 3 or 4 helicopters, just circling the area back and forth. No background story about Trinidad, we don't fly aircrafts unless something major is going on. Much for one aircraft to be in the air, something has to be going on, much less 3 or 4. I was like, you sure this is national helicopters that you saw? He proceeded to tell me, yes, it was definitely those, because he could have made out the symbols and he could have made out the colors by how low they were flying. Something is going on, they are looking for something. This is major shit is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, the government knows exactly what is happening and they don't know what this object is either. And they are seeing what I am seeing. I decided not to tell them the story. I put it in the back of my mind because I really didn't want to be scared for the rest of my time. It was a couple of years later, just going through YouTube. This is when YouTube had introduced the autoplay feature. I'm looking at some videos about Princestown because at that time I worked as a librarian. I needed to do some research on the town for a project that I was doing. And I typed in Princestown and I was watching videos about historical events that happened in Princestown. And it auto-played a video that says unidentified flying object, June 5th, 2011. The same night that I saw that object flying in the sky. You could see that they were using a pretty powerful camera. And I would say it's about 3 or 4 miles away from where that light was. So you are seeing in the video exactly what I was seeing. The light is very fuzzy, right? And it is moving haphazardly in the sky. So it's not moving like a helicopter or plane that would fly in one direction. It is doing things that common aerodynamics would not allow. It was like a holy shit moment, like, yeah, somebody saw this, somebody saw this beside me. And it's in Princestown. And Princestown is a very small town. So, for them thinking, whoever got that footage, God bless them. There were rumors in a town that is adjacent to Princestown about people seeing lights in the sky around that time. There was an article, at that time I was still a teenager, there was an article in our newspaper called the Trinidad Guardian and the headline was Lights in the Sky. And to this day, I have contacted Guardian. I have access to me being a librarian as my major job. I have access to all that information of archives, papers daily, and I cannot find this article anywhere. At that point in time, right? Yes, there was cable, right? At the time when I saw it, but that article was written a few years before. And that article was done by TV6, which also does Trinidad Guardian, right? I saw that story on TV6 News. At that point in time, there were only 2 stations in Trinidad and Tobago, which is TTT and TV6. And they brought that over. Now we have 1 TV. I am young. So when I saw that, me being someone that is sensitive towards, paranormal activity or things from other dimensions, that story by TV6 really stuck with me because it scared the hell out of me to think that people are seeing lights in the sky, right, close to where our town is. And I would never forget it. And I have searched and searched and searched for that article and that news story, and it is nowhere. I am 100% sure, God is my witness, I did not imagine this article or this story. I don't think I ever told anybody this story beside one person who actually got me onto this podcast. And now I'm telling you guys.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Caribbean Mystics podcast. Or I should say, hey Misties.
I'm your host, Paulina, and that's my daughter sneezing.
Aww.
She's playing with the palm tree.
And I am your hostess, Gabrielle. And speaking of daughters, I have something to tell you guys. So my husband has a new hobby and I love that for him. And he loves car audio and there's a competition coming up. So he's been taking a lot of time to do that. And so I've been like home alone a lot. I was on TikTok. This girl was talking about this thing. And when I tell her, consumerism grabbed me and I had to go purchase it. And so essentially I adopted a shark And I got this cute little bracelet. You can't see it because you're listening, but when YouTube come up, it's a little bracelet to commemorate the day that I got my new adopted shark. Her name is Mia, and she's a hammerhead, and I am so excited to like track her. And now I'm just like, I gotta buy more. So the next time my husband have another competition coming up, I'm gonna be like,
I'm
well,
getting another shark.
yeah, it's and the money goes to like, wilderness conservation, and I think that it's a really great cause. But I'm so stoked. It shows you her migratory patterns. She literally is the mandem sugar because in her bio it was essentially like, yeah, when we tagged her, she was pregnant, and her size makes her one of the geldom that Amanda want because her size indicates, I guess, fertility. And so she literally could pick any man she want
Look at
from
this.
I know. I'm just like, y'all, I'm like,
This is so
yeah,
in tandem with like
yeah,
the vibes you're trying to pick up.
And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, Mia, Miguel, like you were definitely made for me. And so prayers out to Mia that she doesn't get caught in a fishnet because apparently that is the number one I guess like possibility that she could like be in danger is if she get caught in one of
Mm.
them like large commercial fish nets. But I had to tell Ayu because I'm so proud, and she's like wonderful, and she's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I love that. It's so cute too. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Maybe like let's
absolutely.
put the link in the show notes if anybody else is interested.
Yeah, I could definitely do that because I think it's like super cool and I appreciate and I looked it at them up to make sure that they were an ethical company doing this, and they are. And we don't get any where this is not a brand deal. They have not partnered with Caribbean Mystics,
No.
but I am just super excited because, my QR code came in so I could start tracking my baby girl today. So it was fresh on the
Aw.
mind.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
On
You know,
another
I'm
note.
a mother. So for Mother's Day, I expect to give Paulina.
Okay, we'll do. I'll get you like a little map or chart you can like write down
Thank
her
you.
path.
Thank you.
Well, on a side note, I guess Caribbean Mystics, we have some exciting news. It's still like in the works, but some
Oh
things
wait,
coming up.
let's save that for the very last like host speak episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we talk about what we found today?
Yeah, we could talk about that. That's pretty cool.
Okay, well, today, so not to toot our own horn, but let's toot. Okay, we were on like the top 10 scariest podcasts to listen to in the dark or best podcast to listen to in the dark. That's what it was, a list. Okay, from lifehacker.com. I think it's a pretty big website. I've seen it before, but maybe to others it's not a big flex. But to me and Gabby, we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we get some features. Being from the Caribbean, I feel like we don't get a lot of like, um, we don't get to be on the spotlight very much unless it has to do with like hurricanes or it's Jamaica, but like us being that getting that little spotlight from somebody outside of our realm too
Yeah.
was really cool. And the
Yeah.
list of podcasts underneath it, we were at the top of the page. All the
Yeah.
lists of podcasts below it are like podcasts that are big, 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 big. They get like hundred thousands to millions of downloads a week. So it was really nice to feel like this sort of validation without prompting it at all or networking with these people and be like, can you feature our show? It was
Yeah.
just truly organic.
Organic.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It actually means a lot to me because I feel like sometimes we could get in our heads about like, oh, have we plateaued with our numbers, and like the analytics, as much as they're helpful, they're also anxiety
Discouraging
inducing. Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really appreciated it because like you said, um it was an organic thing, and I think that that's what makes it mean more
Mhm.
to me. I also want to leave out, that Paulina and I recorded this very same episode days ago, and we had more technical issues, but we could not leave you hanging with the discussion again this week. And
Mhm.
so it is Wednesday night, and we are here recording
Day
again.
before.
So, Shane's episode, I really love that we're getting a story from Trinidad because it is our first Trini story. We have a whole bunch of stories recorded from him. So, like, next episode will also be a Shane story. So this was just a little teaser because he is full of stories. But this story was really interesting because I would really like to delve more into like the aliens and extraterrestrial business. I don't feel like we've properly examined and investigated a lot of the like celestial lore around our region. And I feel like this is like particularly um nuanced from island to island because for Paulina and I, we hear stories regularly about UFO activity in the Virgin Islands. We hear stories about like UFO activity in like Puerto Rico for sure. But we oftentimes don't hear this stream of conversation from other Caribbean islands, especially in like the Windward Islands, like Trinidad. And so the fact that he came out with this UFO story, I love that so much because it's the underrepresented part, I think, of the ties that bind us.
Absolutely. Like you said before, you don't really hear it a lot. People don't really talk about it. It's still kind of a taboo subject, even though I think it's become very mainstream. The thought or the knowledge or the recognition that we are not alone and the unbelievable, overwhelming amount of evidence that's out there of UFOs, UAPs that are seen.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
one
no, for
of my
sure.
favorite things. Go ahead.
No, for sure. I agree with everything you're saying. And can you actually explain that term UAP for people who are unfamiliar and why they are moving the term to UAP? Because I found that to be interesting.
They kind of started using the term UAP because I think UFO just started becoming a little too silly. There was too much like negative connotation attached to it, and it refers to anomalous. So unidentified anomalous phenomenon because these is to account for sightings that are both in the air and water.
Yeah, I find it interesting that there is this movement to move the term to make it more to give it more validity.
Palatable. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
find that to be particularly interesting because it's just like we are seeing humanity step closer to a place where disclosure is occurring as it relates to our connection with like, all of the other planets and all of the beings that could exist on those planets. And I feel like this
Yeah.
is just one very micro movement to make disclosure happen sooner, if that makes sense.
It's kind of already happened in a
Yeah.
way, especially with this whistleblower, David Grush, that happened recently. And that's just how common they've become. They've actually started an entire task force dedicated to these sightings and reporting it. So that whistleblower that came about, it was more so to discuss the topics of course, my Google Chrome just froze on me. So I can't even scroll through my notes right now. What's
Well,
happening?
speaking of technology freezing, we
Dude,
saw this happen in the story. And so I find this to be quite the synchronicity that you're experiencing this. And the fact that we had our issues with our audio again
what's
this
happening?
week. But
Yes.
his account of like his all of the lights in his room and the electricity just not working in his room. And then like
Dude.
everybody else in the house just are living their best lives, AC them running in the background. That's so interesting. But it also speaks to the technology that these beings have access to. And I guess that makes me a little uncomfortable as well.
Definitely. I've just heard so many accounts and stories from people being abducted and them coming through the walls and the ceiling and the roof and pulling you up. And we've all seen that kind of like cliche, like light beam that comes down and the cow rises up from the field and goes into the craft. It's kind of terrifying. And then also the ability for them to be able to communicate with you telepathically. And I only know this like pretty much 99% because my mother had an experience with an alien. And she is not someone that fakes stuff or has stories. She rolls her eyes at my podcast. Not like she doesn't like it. She's proud of us and whatever, but She's just like, okay, ghosts, spirits, whatever, zombies. But she has this one story that happened to her in Argentina when she was a little girl, and I will never forget it. And you know what? I actually did record her, so maybe later on next week or down
Yes.
the road, we're gonna put it on our Patreon for you guys to hear.
Yeah, no, I definitely Paulina shared that story a few days ago when we recorded this first. And I found it to be really, really interesting and definitely Patreon worthy. So, further than that, what I find to be particularly captivating about these UFO encounters is that you can always tell the people who actually saw something because their stories are almost identical to stories that we've heard before. So some of the qualities of the story that we heard from Shane today was he was talking about the lights, he was talking about the erratic movement, the 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 manipulating of technology. We had
Hmm.
a UFO story in season 1. It's called Cosmic Connections. I think it's like season 1, episode 3 with Anastasia. And I remember in the beginning of the story, she's talking about how there was a moment in the night where all of the flashlights went out, right? And so
Hmm.
there are these very specific instances of very like seemingly minute details that always seem to be present in these stories that I think to me adds to the validity of the storyteller. Like Shane having that experience with the electricity, coupled with Anastasia having her own experience with like the flashlights, coupled with all of the other experiences that we've seen people like report. Like History Channel has like a whole like season of episodes of Ancient Aliens where they get these real life accounts of like people seeing aliens, being abducted by aliens. There's a really cool story out of Puerto Rico and I haven't gotten it yet. I haven't gotten someone willing to record it, but I have a friend of mine whose uncle was literally abducted by a alien spacecraft and then was kind of dropped down in the middle of a field in Puerto Rico when they were done with him. And if I could get you guys that story, it would probably be a season opener or a season ender because it sounds like it's that kind of rugadu. In the Caribbean, I'll say in the Virgin Islands, we use that term rugadu. It's basically like, a conundrum, a drama. But is that kind of rugadu? And so it would be definitely a season opener or ender.
Hmm. So speaking of technology failing and stuff, I was doing a little digging to see if there were other accounts of it. And apparently back in 2010, there was a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. that featured 7 former Air Force officers that were stationed at a nuclear bases all around the country. And they have seen several UFOs visit these Air Force bases, and they have literally disabled the nuclear missile stationed there. And the reason they had this press conference is because they themselves quote, "I want the government to acknowledge that this phenomenon exists." And this is from Robert Salas, who's a former U.S. Air Force nuclear launch officer. And he had such an interesting story. And back in 1967, he was stationed 60 feet underground at the Malmstorm Air Force Base in Montana. And he was monitoring the Launch Control Center for 10 nuclear missiles when he received a call from the guard above ground. And he was saying they were seeing some lights in the sky, making odd maneuvers, very silent. And he knows that they're not airplanes. So at first, he didn't pay much attention to this report. And then a few minutes later, he received a second phone calls. And they called back saying, and he's screaming over the phone, very frightened, very scared. And he could tell by his voice, he's like, "Sir, I got all the guards out here. They've got their weapons drawn. We're all looking at an orange or reddish pulsating oval shaped object, and it's about 30 feet in diameter and just hovering above the front gate." As he alerted the officers stationed with him underground, he said he noticed that the missiles started going offline. They started to go into a no-go or unlaunchable condition. They were essentially disabled while this object was hovering overhead. And then eventually, the unidentified object took off. The missiles didn't suffer any permanent damage, but it took several days to get them back up online and running again. And I remember hearing something about this years ago. And so going back to it and hearing Shane's story about how only his room, only his phone, and it started coming closer to him. Like, can you just imagine that type of technology that has the capabilities to do that? And then I think the
Yeah.
real interesting part is that later on down the road, all these helicopters were coming out. He learned from his friend that all these helicopters were coming out, and he was insisting when I did this interview, he's like, in Trinidad, they don't come for nobody unless something big is going on. And of course, we always see the cover-ups because eventually there was an article about it, something he saw on the news, and to this day, he can't find it. He works in the library, has access to all of these articles and information and documents, and it's gone, just like scrubbed out.
So So one of the things that come up for me is, evidently we know that the military is doing their best to keep track of what's happening in our skies, not just with, other countries and some of the things that they're doing with their military, but also like, let's call a spade a spade. The CIA has been working with extraterrestrials and experimentation that's very well documented since like the 50s or prior. And all of that information is online for people that are willing to do the research. So I don't even want to get into arguing that or trying to prove that because it's out there and it's discernible. But
Mhm.
when you consider the lengths that the military also goes through to keep all of this undercover, it's like extensive. There is theories that there is an underwater military base by St. Croix on the West End. It's a submarine base, and it's said that they do a lot of ocean, um, ocean observations and stuff. But one of the reasons why I find that to be interesting is because there's also all of these rumors that there are tunnels underneath islands like Puerto Rico or underneath the Virgin Islands, and that these tunnels either link to inner Earth or they are somehow a portal between Earth
Mm.
and space. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and like even when you listen to some of the lore out of Puerto Rico, they have a military base. I think it's close to the El Yunque rainforest, and it's called Roosevelt Roads. And there's been speculation for decades about some of the experimentation that happens over there. There's a theory that the chupacabra was an experimentation gone bad over by Roosevelt Roads.
Mm.
There's been instances where there's been like actual a UFO crash that happened that people witnessed, saw it, went to the site, saw that where the UFO had crashed, almost left like a residue on the plants all around it and like completely melted the nearby ecosystem, which was very weird. And when the military came, they roped off the area. No one was allowed to go there. And then the story changed where it was something, more benevolent, like, oh, it was just a
A weather
satellite
balloon.
crash. Yeah, yeah. And
It
all the
was them
people are
damn weather
like,
balloons.
correct. And all the people are like, what are you talking about? Like, we literally witnessed this happen. Like we saw that it was a weird, strange craft. We saw that there were these like lifeless beings that were kind of hanging out the aircraft. And this happened around the area of Casanovas for anybody from Puerto Rico. But it's just there's so much lore, and I'm just such a believer that where there's smoke, there's fire. Don't get me wrong, my
Mhm.
Caribbean people, the makeup drama in the head sometimes. But
Mhm.
where there's smoke, there's fire. And so while we may sometimes add in a little extra detail for drama, I also feel like the very core of these stories sit in a basin of truth that also have to be acknowledged.
Definitely. I mean, there's that theory that's been going around that the government, the higher ups have been preparing us for years for the exposure of aliens and other life through
Mm.
media, movies, lunchboxes, magazines, so that it kind of dampens the impact of when that day comes, when it's like, hey, here are the aliens and these are their terms and this is the deal that we've worked out or whatever it is.
Out.
Um, and it even goes to like that even last year, there was that whistleblower, David Gersh, that came out, and they literally testified in Congress with 3 military veterans. It was like a highly anticipated hearing as well, and it was public, so it's out there. And it included Air Force officer intelligence who claimed the US government has operated a secret, multi-decade reverse engineering program of recovered vessels. He also said that the US has recovered non-human biologics from alleged crash sites. And it's interesting that they use these words non-human, and they also mention UAPs again because the term alien, UFO, it's got too much stigma attached to it. I think people visualize like them like hillbillies, redneck, or somebody like, I saw a damn UFO and it abducted me, you know?
Yeah.
And they're trying to change the voice to take it a little bit more seriously. And so while like the subject of aliens or non-humans did come up, more the discussion was centered around improving processes for reporting unidentified aerial phenomenon and
Mhm.
the call to remove a stigma for aviators who report UAP sightings because it's so damn common with government agents. So David Gersh, he was a retired major. He went from being part of the Pentagon's UAP task force to becoming a whistleblower. So, in response to this public pressure and political pressure, the federal and military agencies, they actually shared a trove of information about unexplained aircraft phenomenons and encounters. So, David goes on to say that allegedly the US has retrieved non-human biological matter from the pilots of these crafts, saying that that was an assessment of people with direct knowledge on the UAP program that he talked to and that are currently still in the program. It's just like kind of amazing that this came out in public, broad daylight for everyone to see. And these are decorated people. These are people with in the government agency. Like it's just like kind of a mind blowing that we've come to this time where it's not so crazy anymore.
Yeah. I think that, to hearing you talk kind of jogged my memory because I was just like, like, do we have any lore in the Caribbean that's like connected to extraterrestrials? And we don't necessarily, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation, but in terms of like our belief systems, I don't know that they're closely tied to like aliens. But I do remember I was doing research on the Bermuda Triangle, and all of the phenomena that happens there. And one of the earliest accounts of a supernatural phenomena happening in the Bermuda Triangle came by way of Christopher Columbus. And in one of his journals,
Mm.
he identified that he had seen um, something that was otherworldly. And it was essentially like a huge light that seemed to be like a craft of some sort. But at that point in time, they didn't really have the technology at that point, so they didn't have the verbiage to be able to really describe what
Right.
that is. But I found it to be so interesting, and the fact that that happened in like the Bermuda Triangle. I think that there are certain hot spots around the world that almost create a frequency, of attraction for
Mm.
some of this to happen. So like when you look at the reports of UFO activity around islands like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, it's so heightened that it's almost an enigma. And you have to think to yourself, there has to be something about this island chain. I mean, I feel like
We
we
getting deep.
we got super deep with this one, but it was such an interesting episode, and there's so many more avenues that we could travel in this conversation. But did you
Yeah.
have anything remaining that you wanted to say?
I want to say thank you though to Shane for contributing to the story. He was a joy to record and connect with, and he's got some other great stories coming up. So happy, I'm happy to have Trinidad and Tobago on board with Caribbean Mystics. We're expanding.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much, Shane. This has been another
Like,
episode.
yeah, like,
Oh,
subscribe, review, send us
yes.
reviews. Those
Please.
help us so much, and evidently they have. And all of your subscriptions to Patreon has been so immensely helpful in this
Man,
process as
yeah,
well. Like it
yeah.
is, I'm so excited for our YouTubes to come out, you guys. Like, I don't even want to tell you what's to come, but just know that your Patreon membership has contributed to some of the upgrades we're doing with the show. And we love y'all.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. And say a prayer tonight that Hammerhead Mia doesn't end up in a fishnet because I would be devastated.
Oh, sweet prayers to you, Mia. She gonna be good.
All right, guys. I hope you have a most beautiful day. And this has been another episode of the Caribbean Mystics podcast.
Take care. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Jouvert Riddim by Marcano.